Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. It's a webinar we are organizing in the framework of For You For All, which is the community of practice among the European Universities Alliances. We are actually representing two communities of practice here, the one on mobility and the one on upscaling, internationalization, and innovation in education, a long name. And the reason we're doing this together is that we are really at the intersection of the scope of these two interest groups. And the goal of our activities, including this webinar, is to learn from each other and to share experiences and concepts that hopefully will be useful for all of us and for you. We're talking about virtual exchange slash COIL. Already, I won't go into why the slash, why the two terms that will come up in the presentations, but we are really in the area. In the alliances, we're all expected to work on internationalization, but more specifically also on what they call physical, blended, and virtual mobility. And it's especially the virtual mobility part that can be quite confusing, where people understand different things under different terms. So that's really the area we're focusing on today.
A little bit of housekeeping as well. We will share the slides afterwards, and we will also be sharing the recording of this session. Slides will be sent directly to participants, and the recording will be made available on the For You For All website. During the session, you are free to exchange amongst yourselves in the chat. For questions, please put them in the Q&A box. If you don't see the Q&A box on your screen, you may have to find the little circle with 3 dots where it says more, and you will find the Q&A box. So since we expect many participants, we are already more than 150, please put your questions in the Q&A box and we will do our best to answer as many as possible, and we'll be doing that after the presentations. So back to you, Pete.
Thanks a lot, Lotte. So as you've noticed maybe by now and seen on the screen, Lotte and myself are acting as moderators today for this session. I'm Piet van Hove. I work for Heroes Alliance on behalf of the coordinating institution, Thomas More University of Applied Sciences in Belgium. I've been working in internationalization for a very long time. About 25 or 30 years. And in the last few years before joining the Alliance, I was really happy to be serving as the president and previously a vice president of the European Association for International Education. We have a very simple program for you today. We have one keynote. Or Lotte, you want to say something about yourself as we jump
Just very briefly,
Yeah.
I work at Aarhus University in Denmark. I have a full-time position as project manager for mobility in the Circle U Alliance. I've also worked in internationalization for quite a long time, and I co-chair the Topical group for mobility in the For You For All framework, which is a community of practice for alliances.
Yeah. So, as I was starting to say, we have a very simple program. We have one keynote and then two testimonials or case studies from alliances. And I will just start with introducing the keynote. So the speaker we've invited for today is Simone Hackett. Simone is working in the Netherlands, but is not entirely Dutch, as you will soon notice. When she starts to speak. But she is working at the Hague University of Applied Sciences, but also doing research and preparing a PhD at Utrecht University. And I will leave it to Simone to say a few words about that during her presentation. But we've both been working on COIL for a long time. I just looked up that actually Simone and I presented together on COIL in 2014 at the Prague EAIE conference together with John Rubin. So that's already a while ago. But without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Simone.
Okay. I'm going to bear with me while I share my screen. Okay, can you see this?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. Yes, thank you very much, Pete, for introducing me and also for inviting me to speak. Yes, my name's Simone Hackett. I'm Irish. You might hear from my accent, not Dutch. And yes, senior lecturer and researcher at the Hague University of Applied Sciences and doing my research at Utrecht University. So today, what we want to talk to you about is connecting COIL with the university alliances. So of course, the university alliances requires institutions to provide physical, virtual, and blended forms of international learning. And in that sense, COIL directly supports these requirements because it creates accessible virtual mobility opportunities, prepares students for physical mobility, and also offers this virtual component to the blended mobility programs. It also expands internationalization to a bigger group of students. And it also strengthens the collaboration not only among students, but also educators and the institutions themselves. So that's why it sounds like a win-win for everybody, COIL. But you might have heard of the term virtual exchange as well. Already Pete touched on it a little bit, and the same with virtual mobility. But we want to really distinguish between virtual exchange and COIL because there are differences. But what are the differences? Virtual exchange has been labeled as an umbrella term, which many initiatives fall under. Some of them you can see here in the image, such as online intercultural exchange, e-tandem, tele-tandem, tele-collaboration, as well as COIL. But it's important to distinguish COIL from some of these initiatives, because in some of these initiatives, they don't have the collaborative learning element that COIL has, or they don't involve two or more educators from different institutions connecting and developing collaborative learning assignments for their students. So in that sense, Rubin and Gus came up with the analogy: virtual exchange is like the word sports, while COIL is like the word basketball. And for practice and for research, it's very important to distinguish COIL from virtual exchange because of the reasons that I just mentioned. And if we want to, especially in research, if we want to measure how effective COIL is, we need to first define what it is and what its characteristics are. So that brings me to the next slide, in which myself, Mark Dawson, and Jeroen Jansen and Jan van Tartwijk from Utrecht wrote this paper. And in this paper, we define what COIL is and distinguish it from virtual exchange, because my other studies, I really focus on testing the effectiveness of COIL and also its course design, but we needed to define what it is before we can do that. So of course, there's the QR code if you want to scan it, and you can have it for later on. But I will explain very quickly what it includes, because of course there's many people that are in this session right now. Some have different levels of knowledge of what COIL is. Some might be experts, some might be very new to it. So it's important just to be on the same page and explain what COIL is. So this is one of the images that we include in the paper, just to give an idea, a visualization of how COIL works or what it is. Basically, it's two educators or more from two institutions, or more in the case of the alliances, that connect, find common ground in the curriculum or the courses that they offer at their institutions, in which they can embed a COIL. So it can be in a bachelor program, but it could also be in a master's program as well. It can be in the core curriculum, or it can be in an elective such as a minor. But they need to have this flexibility in the program in which they can embed the COIL course and the COIL assignments. They will co-design this course and these assignments together, and then they will offer it to their students. Students are put into groups, multicultural groups, and throughout a period of usually 4 to 20 weeks, they will work on these assignments, these collaborative learning assignments, and this is where the magic happens. So when they work on these assignments, they should be learning from each other, but also with each other. And that relates to curriculum content, but also interculturally. And then, of course, the outcome is that they, through this collaboration, they further develop their intercultural competence, and they also learn more about their disciplines or whatever project that they were working on. If it's problem solving or so on and so forth, they develop these competencies and these skills. In our paper, we describe the 9 characteristics of COIL. And of course, when you talk to different people, everyone will have like a little bit of a different version of COIL. But we looked at existing papers and existing definitions, and this is what we came up with, what we identified from our research in looking at what's out there at the moment. And some of this is a little bit of repeating what I just said, but the first characteristic is collaboration of 2 or more educators from different higher education institutions in different countries. The educators come together, co-design, co-facilitate a collaborative course or set of assignments with the focus on collaborative learning. Emphasis on intercultural curriculum content, and the outcome developing also collaborative skills. Assignments are designed to ensure essential elements of collaborative learning, and this comes from Johnson & Johnson. And this is quite important. So there's these 5 elements, and a COIL course should try to combine or try to embed these 5 elements. And if it does, then it will be more effective. So it's in our paper, we explain this a little bit more, but the first one here is positive social interdependence. And that is really so that the students rely on each other, they need each other, they depend on each other to complete the assignment. So it's not just Jan doing a bit of his work and submitting it to the teacher or submitting it to his peer, and then Sana doing her piece and then just sticking it together and submitting it to the teacher. They really need each other to combine, to work together and to collaborate together meaningfully to complete their assignment. So we explain that in our paper. So if you want to read a little bit more on that, you can. Another characteristic is that the COIL course or the COIL assignments include a graded element. So this is very important also for the motivation for students, that they are graded on what they do. That includes the collaborative sessions and also the end product as well. It can be implemented into any discipline, and also can be interdisciplinary. The duration is several weeks. We put down here ideally between 4 and 15 weeks, but that can vary. It can be a whole semester, or perhaps even less, but more intense. Okay, but in our description, we're not extremely strict on it, but the 4 to 15 weeks is also something which the SUNY COIL Centre has recommended as well. It does not involve flying abroad. I know with some of the BIPs, the blended intensive programs, it does involve flying abroad, but our vision on COIL that it doesn't involve flying abroad. It's in its own right a teaching and learning method, and in that sense, it could be seen as relatively inclusive because students don't need to go abroad for this authentic international experience, and also relatively environmentally friendly. And a very important one, students do not pay extra fees to participate in COIL. They just pay the regular tuition fees at their institution and no extra fees to participate in a COIL course. So these are our 9 characteristics. In addition to that, we developed a definition. An inclusive, environmentally friendly teaching and learning method used to internationalize the curriculum, in which educators from different educational institutions in different countries come together to co-design and co-facilitate collaborative learning assignments that are embedded within the curriculum with the goal of facilitating the development of students' collaborative skills, intercultural competence, and curriculum content learning through collaboration. And through collaboration is the key. In addition to distinguishing COIL from virtual exchange, we also wanted to share with you today a little bit of research. and how we can assess the effectiveness of COIL. So this is one of the first studies that I did in which I tested whether COIL works or not. And this is a very popular paper now. It has over 400 citations, and it's every week I get notifications that more and more people are citing this paper. And I think the reason for it is for policy, but also for practice. Because in this paper, we tested whether COIL works using control groups. We had 4 groups, one experimental group between Dutch students and American students, and one with a control group with Dutch students and American students. And we got mixed results. So for the American students, we saw an effect. They developed intercultural competence, but for the Dutch students, we didn't see this. So this is quite an interesting result because it explains why COIL or how COIL can be effective for certain groups of students, but perhaps not for other groups of students, or it needs to be adjusted in a certain way so that it is effective. So that's quite interesting. But it did show that COIL is beneficial. It does help students develop intercultural competence, but it needs some adjustments. Some of the things that it also can be when COIL can be effective or when it can't be effective, but some of the practical considerations to ensure it is effective is finding the right partner, embedding COIL within the curriculum, permission from the curriculum committee so that there's no issues down the line, ensuring that there's GDPR and data sharing agreements in place and these are signed in case there's a data leak or anything like that, ensuring the organizational culture is similar, time zones. So what time, if you're going to sync the classes so that they meet at the same time during work hours or during college hours, ensure that the differences are, workable. Timetables, holidays, exam weeks, etc. Make sure that you're not going to schedule a class when it's a holiday in the other country. Number of credits are very important. If on one side it's only 1 credit and on the other side it's 5 credits, that's going to put things off balance. One group of students is going to be more motivated than the other group of students, and this could cause problems. So you need to ensure that the credits are balanced. Assessment is included in there. The number of students is balanced also within the collaborating teams, and the number of students is balanced. Language, what is the proficiency of the students? If you have native English speakers, you might want to remind them that, okay, not everybody is a native English speaker, so reminding them of these differences. And of course, your learning objectives, and that relates to some of the next slides in which we talk about course design. And I'm just keeping an eye on the time because I know that I only have I have 20 minutes, so I have to be quick. If I'm speaking too fast, I apologize, but I'm just trying to get through all the information as quickly as possible. So as I just mentioned before with the first study, every week I see new research coming out on COIL all of the time. At the beginning, it was quite positive. So it was COIL is great. It works. It's helping our students. They're developing intercultural competencies. But we're slowly seeing more research coming out, which is also showing another side. It's showing that COIL is positive and is beneficial. But there's also some research that's coming out that's showing that it doesn't always do what it's supposed to do. So in some studies, it has shown that it has reported that students are less open to diversity after the COIL course or less motivated. Or they don't. There's a decrease in how they in their attitudes or feelings towards global citizenship. Or we have studies that are showing negative findings as well, or null findings as well. So this is important to acknowledge that it's all not just fantastic. And if you group students together, they will immediately and automatically learn. What is important is the course design and how it's facilitated. And we noticed this, so we started doing some research into course design to to test which course design is more effective or not, and also looking at factors that might influence students' intercultural learning in COIL. So in a study that we just published last year, we looked at personality and attitudes and also group composition. And what we saw was that personality traits do influence intercultural learning, like specific personality traits, and so do attitudes towards group work. And in addition to that, we saw that elements such as making the sessions compulsory was really important for students' motivation and for students' learning, and also assessment as well. So sometimes the collaborative activity, so showing up to the online discussion, is not compulsory or not graded. So students don't show up. Or they're not as motivated to participate in it because there's no consequences if they don't, and this has a negative or counterproductive effect on the students who are participating. So we don't in previous research we didn't really acknowledge that or really didn't look at that, but it does. If you give them an evaluation at the end of the course, did you learn a lot? They will all just say yes, it was great, we had a great experience. But when you actually start looking into it further, they're not all having a great experience, and you want to know why they're not all having a great experience or why they're not learning. So it's very important to design the COIL course so that this you can consider these aspects as well. And another study that we're just finalizing now is testing the course design of a COIL course. And I'll be very quick on this, but the outcomes of this one is that we really see that the context is very important. So students' background, if they are already have a lot of intercultural competence, if they're already used to working with international students, they will be much more active and much more confident in the group discussions than students who don't have these experiences. So in this particular course, it was between Dutch and American students, and there's always this notion that native English speakers are more dominant or have more power in these discussions. But actually in this study, and it relates to the previous study as well, we saw that the American students were not dominant in these discussions, and actually the students from the Netherlands were much more taking over the discussion. And through our research, we did an observation research, we saw that the Dutch students were asking more questions and were talking more overall compared to the US students. So that was quite an interesting outcome of this study. But it does remind us that, okay, we need to consider these different groups of students when designing COIL courses and also when facilitating COIL courses. And now I'm coming up to just a few statements from students that followed some of these courses. So I talked about unbalanced numbers and nationalities in some of the teams, which cause problems. So one girl says, in my group, there was one English student. So we were three Dutch students and one English. That was really a pity because it made it difficult to really connect with the English student. She was not really interested in us. So of course, what happened here is actually the three Dutch students were speaking in Dutch together and the English student felt excluded. But I had read both sides of the reflection reports on how they filled in the survey, so I knew what was happening on both sides. But the Dutch just thought, oh, she's not interested in us, but she was actually feeling extremely excluded because they kept speaking in Dutch. And this was because it was unbalanced and because we didn't, well, I wasn't the lecturer who was involved in this course, we didn't facilitate it. We should have facilitated the language proficiency side of things as well, to say, okay, don't speak in Dutch because then she will feel excluded, and so on and so forth. Also, comments on lack of attendance can hinder motivation. So someone says, if people wouldn't attend something, then you'd feel less inclined to put effort in. Or I did personally because I was like, what is the point of me doing this as I'm on my own? A few other ones about not assessing the collaborative learning activities affects motivation. So we didn't really have a project with the students from the UK. I just saw them on Thursday and we just discussed everything we needed to. And then we went back to our own studies because we were just discussing things with them. So we didn't really have to collaborate with them. So this relates back to the collaborative learning elements of interdependence. So students really needing each other to complete an assignment. If they don't need each other, then they won't really collaborate meaningfully. So you really need to design the assignments so that they depend on one another. If not, you get outcomes like this, that they see it as redundant, the COIL course, because they don't need to actually participate and collaborate with one another. I'll come to an end because it's 12:55 and that's when I'm supposed to end. So if I can round this all up, so the main implications, collaboration does not occur automatically. Poorly designed COIL courses can limit learning and in some cases reinforce stereotypes or disengagement, like I explained with the English student and the 3 Dutch students. Course design, facilitation, sufficient time for students to get to know each other, extremely important for meaningful interaction. And what else can I say? And the group composition as well. Okay, so ensuring that they're balanced, ensuring that nationalities within the groups are balanced, extremely important. And of course, the collaborative learning elements as well, that I mentioned, and constructive alignment, that the learning outcomes, the assessment, are all aligned with one another. And I just want to finally end on this point, that none of this can happen if educators, instructional designers, support staff do not have the adequate resources and support to do this. Because it does take a little bit extra effort to really design a COIL course well, including all of these elements that I mentioned. So you do need extra time to do this. So hopefully institutions can realize this and provide the extra time and extra support to anyone who is involved in developing these COIL courses. And that is it. I will end on that and we'll leave questions till the end and then I'll stop sharing. And I apologize for speaking so fast. Okay.
Well, thank you, Simone. Indeed, a very dense presentation,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you delivered what we invited you to focus on. So thanks a lot for that.
Okay.
As you said, we will come back to questions and further discussion after the next 2 presentations. And I will give the floor first to Judith Goris, who is from Ghent University in Belgium and representing the ENLIGHT Alliance. Personally, I know Ghent University, of course, for a long time, and they've always been a pioneering institution in internationalization. So I'm happy to see that they bring their experience also to the field of alliances. So Judith, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope you can see the screen coming up.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so I will be a bit more general, not only focusing on virtual exchange or COIL, but discuss how we in ENLIGHT use several online learning formats. So in our alliance, ENLIGHT, we have 10 comprehensive universities, research-intensive universities, and we exist since 2020. And we focus on online learning for many reasons. And it's a focus point among many focus points, so it's not our only focus. But one of the reasons, or the most important reason we focus on this is, as you know, because the European Commission has the ambition that 50% of graduates in alliances should have benefited from an internationalization experience. And we think if we ever want to reach that target of 50%, then physical mobility will not be enough because it always requires funding. So yeah, we see online learning as a good addition to this set of internationalization experiences. And we have defined 3 formats of online learning in ENLIGHT. The first one we call virtual mobility.
And this is where students take an online course of another institution, and the credits are awarded by this other institution and then recognized in the curriculum at the home institution. Then the second format we see is virtual exchange, and this we define as students and lecturers from 2 different courses in 2 different universities collaborating online. And so for this format, students are enrolled for the course just at their home university, so they obtain the credits at their home university, just as any other standard course. And the virtual exchange can then be the full course, or it can be only a component of the course. And of course, it can be between 2 universities, but also more than 2. And I just learned from Simone that this is probably maybe a better term as COIL, but we in ENLIGHT, we decided to go with virtual exchange for now. And then finally, the third format is blended mobility, and this you probably all know as blended intensive programs, so which have an online component, but also physical component. And now I will briefly go over each of the formats to tell you where we are now in our alliance ENLIGHT, and also what our challenges are. So for blended mobility, this is a format that is running since a few years already. And in the current academic year, we have 18 blended intensive programs offered with places for more than 500 students. And in the first semester of this year, we reached around 150 mobile students. And these courses are often interdisciplinary, using challenge-based education, and students are very positive about them. But it's still a challenge to recruit enough students. And for the recruitment, we use a nomination procedure. So the home institution nominates them as in regular physical semester exchange. We also see it's still difficult to embed these in the study programs at the sending institutions, because the offer of BIPs can change every year and there's only limited number of places for students. And as I said, this is a format that relies on funding because it has a component of physical mobility. So we think there's little room to really massively upscale this kind of format. Another challenge that we have within ENLIGHT is that we are currently disseminating the information on these courses to students via manual web pages. But we also have an ENLIGHT course catalog, and this is a catalog that's interconnected with the study information systems of our 10 universities. So it's automatically pooling the study offer from the 10 universities together. And we want to transfer to this catalog to use it as a dissemination tool for students, but we're still working on that. Then for virtual exchange, or COIL, but we say virtual exchange, we currently have some initiatives running and some under development. Some are funded through the calls that we had for seed funding. But we don't really have exact numbers. We think, or we see that this format is quite easy for lecturers to set up in a way because they don't really need administrative support. So usually they can find a collaborator themselves, and they can decide in their existing course to implement a component of virtual exchange. And for that, they don't really need admin support because student recruitment and recognition in the curriculum and so on always follows just the standard procedures as for every university course. And because they don't require that much support on the administrative side, we at the central level of the university don't really have exact numbers on how many of these courses we have running or how many students are participating. And then finally, virtual mobility. Here we had a few courses since a few years, but in the current academic year, we launched a big pilot project where 3 universities opened a lot of courses. to all universities or students of all universities in the Alliance. So we have 38 courses this year with places for more than 900 students. And in the first semester, we already had 150 virtually mobile students. So it means that already from the first semester that we implemented this, we reached the same amount of students as we are reaching with BIPs, which are implemented for around 5 years already. And these courses, they are from very diverse formats. So at the moment, we are experimenting a little bit with what works and what doesn't work, and we leave it up to the teachers to organize these courses as they think is best in their context. For procedures between the universities, the mobility procedures, we decided to keep it as lean as possible. So there's no learning agreement, but it's very important, as with everything, that the courses are recognized in the curriculum at the home institution. But each university has a different procedure for how to make that happen. And what we have as challenges in virtual mobility is a high number of student dropout. That's our biggest challenge. We are also still, we are struggling with reaching enough students, but it's only the first year that we are implementing this, so we probably should give it some time. And we have decided or set up the system in such a way that students can directly register at the host university themselves. So there's no nomination procedure needed as with physical mobility. Here also, it's still difficult to embed it in study programs at the sending institution because the offer is, can change year to year. We also see online assessment, especially for large groups, as a challenge. And we here have the same transfer we want to make from disseminating via manual ways to dissemination through the interconnected course catalog. That was it for me. If there's any questions or suggestions, you can also always email me after the webinar.
Thanks, Judith. Thank you for giving this clear overview of the approach within ENLIGHT to these different formats. And I like the fact that you've clearly distinguished between virtual mobility and virtual exchange and given the most crucial characteristics. So we'll come back to that, I think, in the discussion. Lotte, did you want to introduce our next speaker?
Yes, it's a pleasure to welcome Hannah Zoller from Humboldt University in Berlin, who is the COIL coordinator. And Hannah, I guess you are best placed to introduce how COIL projects have been unfolding in the Circle U Alliance. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lotte. Let me share my screen. Okay, can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay. As a last speaker, I feel I will probably be repeating a little bit of what has previously been said, but I will be talking to you about our COIL and Circle U, which is funded by the DAD, as we are doing this as part of our Humboldt for Europe initiative. And I will speak to you today about how COIL helps us build a European classroom without walls. In Circle U, our goal is to make international collaboration in research and teaching a natural everyday part of academic life. European university alliances are much more than just networks of institutions. They create integrated ecosystems that bring together education, research, innovation, and also societal engagement. It's all about sharing ideas, trying out new ways of working together and learning across borders and disciplines. In Circle U, for example, students from all partner universities can access shared courses and activities through our so-called open campus. And then through initiatives such as COIL, we create shared learning communities where students and staff collaborate across borders, across different disciplines and cultures. So here I would like to share some numbers. We have so far funded 16 COIL projects within Circle U since 2024. And with this, we have reached approximately 410 students. 15 universities have been involved. That's the 9 Circle U universities. But some COILs are between 2 universities and others between, there are 4 universities involved, and then they don't necessarily have to be Circle U universities. So everyone here we all work in our alliances on creating universities of the future, where we pull together resources and enable an education without borders. And one of our key goals is to make mobility opportunities more accessible for all students and all staff in our networks. And while physical mobility is still a popular tool for internationalization, it is not available to everyone, as we know. And we therefore have to find other ways to ensure that all students have access to international and intercultural learning opportunities. So the question should no longer be how many students travel abroad, but more how many students experience international and intercultural learning. And this is not only mobility or joint degrees, but it is very much shared learning experiences. And in COIL, interaction happens virtually. The projects are developed with partners from other countries and sometimes even across different disciplines. And through teamwork and interaction, students gain intercultural experience and also develop digital competences. So COIL is a collaborative teaching and learning approach that opens up opportunities for both students and staff. On the one hand, lecturers can further develop their academic and disciplinary expertise, but also their intercultural competences. They can make new and strengthen also existing international networks, while at the same time enriching their classroom with diverse perspectives. And on the other hand, COIL provides an international experience for students who are, for those who are usually or otherwise unable or unlikely to participate in physical mobility. It also exposes them to different perspectives and ways of approaching challenges and gives them a chance to develop intercultural competences, communication skills, language skills, and get experience in in virtual teamwork. So COIL can turn internationalization into a means for addressing societal challenges through the collaboration. Here in a geography project, for example, between Humboldt and Vienna, students worked in international teams and learned to navigate different perspectives while they together explored climate adaptation. And another project brought together 4 universities to examine digital inequalities, I think in Southeast Asia, from multiple disciplinary viewpoints, and this exposed students to different cultural as well as disciplinary approaches. And in a sustainability collaboration between Humboldt and Aarhus, we had students as the leads, and we just had another call and also have another application from a student-led project, which is great. Then the final project here combined scientific and artistic research. And here, international collaboration became a way of tackling societal challenges through interdisciplinary dialogue. So these examples all show that internationalization is not an end in itself. It's rather, it becomes a means of learning, of collaborating, and addressing shared challenges. And at the same time, students don't only get intercultural skills, but also develop all kinds of other skills while collaborating. So if I were asked how to start COIL, where to start, I would always suggest to start small. A COIL initiative doesn't have to be or it doesn't have to begin with a full semester-long course, but can just be a smaller component of an existing course. This was said before as well. An impactful COIL is not about technology. It's much more about making human connections. And an impactful internationalization is not about moving students around the world, but about bringing the world into students' learning experience. And COIL helps us here to create a European classroom without walls that is accessible to everyone and supports reaching our goal of creating a European university. But of course, that was also mentioned earlier, lecturers do need support and the right tools to support successful COILs. They need time, they need pedagogical guidance, they need some examples of good practice, and of course also institutional support. And that's it from me. I hope I could inspire you to join the COIL revolution.
Okay, thanks a lot, Hannah, also for bringing a specific perspective from Circle U Alliance. So meanwhile, we've seen quite a few questions pop up in the Q&A box, and we have 15 minutes left in our scheduled time. I think we'll probably be able to go a few minutes over time if there's still interest, but let's see where we get. I noticed that among the questions, there are a number of questions that have to do with how to motivate staff to engage in COIL, how to support the staff, and also how to motivate management to let's say support their staff in engaging COIL. How many hours will it take? So it's about staff motivation, staff engagement. How do we do that, and how do we support that? And I think this personally, before handing over to the speakers, the starting point I think should be that the burden should not be on the individual teacher. I think it's a collective responsibility of the degree program to provide internationalization opportunities in the curriculum. So it's also the burden should also probably be collective. But that's just my opinion to start off the discussion. Does anyone want to jump in on that point? Maybe Simone, you could go first in just outlining a little bit what are general ideas around staff motivation and support. Very briefly, and then we can see how the alliances manage that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm coming from the Netherlands, right? So I can talk about our context in the Netherlands. And I know at the beginning, it was very much the pioneers who started with COIL and developing COIL courses. And of course, it would be things like the intrinsic motivation to perhaps, offer this international experience to your students. Or for some lecturers, it was the idea that they could travel to the partner institution as well. What I see, which is a motivating factor for some lecturers or educators, is that they can also research what they're doing as well. So they can evaluate how the COIL course went in their subject, in their discipline as well, which is an intrinsic motivation, and also to publish on this. One of the drivers in the Netherlands was also an initiative that came from our government, which was that they provided a funding for COIL courses, which was for 15,000 euros for each lecturer who wanted to develop a COIL course. And this gave a big push in the Netherlands for educators to develop COIL courses. And the 15,000 came in the form of time. So it would buy you out from teaching hours, for example. But that funding, that really gave us a push, but that funding has stopped now. So everyone's wondering how it's going to continue, especially with the budget cuts in the Netherlands as well. And time is very, very important. So will this increase in COIL course continue, or will it drop or what will happen. In my institution, COIL is embedded within the strategic plan. So it's one of the ambitions with our institution. So that is also a driver. Although we're not monitoring it and putting, targets on every program has to have a COIL course, it does give some guidance and some vision on that this is one of the tools we can use to help our students develop intercultural competence. And of course, with the university alliances there, it gives us this opportunity to find partners within the alliances to develop the COIL courses. So that helps a little bit instead of searching for a partner. But yes, it is still an issue. Some lecturers love developing COIL courses, and some are like, why bother? This is just extra work. So perhaps sharing best practices and positive experiences from lecturers and also from students in the context of a specific department. This might get teachers more motivated to develop COIL courses.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Of course, we
Yeah.
don't need every teacher to have a COIL course.
Yeah.
We just need
Yeah.
to motivate and support some of them. Judith, you want to jump in on this issue?
Yes, maybe I can just share how we do it here, mostly at Ghent University. So we have also developed a lot of materials, or make sure that it's very clear to teachers and to staff how everything works. So it's pedagogical guidelines, but also administrative guidelines and so on. So everything they need to know is mapped out clearly. And we also have a team of educational developers centrally that can always help with things like which tool do I use for COIL or for virtual exchange, and how do I organize online assessment? These kind of questions is something we have a working group centrally to support them with that. We also have some funding that's then within ENLIGHT, so within the alliance, but it's mostly small funds. It's usually to either visit a partner if it's with a lecturer abroad, so it's for mobility, or it's a small amount of funding that they can, for example, use to hire someone to help set up everything, to make knowledge clips or set up an online learning path, or like the first developments. But this is really always starter grants, so startup funding, and we expect, if we give them funding, that the initiative is sustainable and can keep on running after the funding ends as well. We also see that some teachers do see advantages of this without needing additional support or needing additional incentives. I mean, for example, some see that if they can divide the workload with a teacher abroad, that it might actually in some ways also keep the workload not too high. And also some teachers have mentioned that teaching online also makes it possible for them to teach when they're in a different location, or maybe they once recorded a lot of knowledge clips, so they don't actually have to do that much teaching in front of the group. So some do see advantages in itself.
Okay, thanks. Hannah, I also saw a specific question in the chat to you. What kind of incentives do you use for staff, and also
Yeah.
what kind of support can you provide?
It's well, the incentives are quite similar to what has been mentioned already. That's travel and funding. We have calls at Humboldt University for COILs with Circle U, and there is currently funding for up to 5,000 euros to develop a COIL. And this is often used also for mobility at the moment. And then we have some matchmaking events within Circle U, which is interesting then for lecturers who don't yet have a partner, but most of them, sorry for the noise now, do apply when they already have a partner.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, fine.
But actually, what you're mentioning now is another area where we have different questions about partnering. How do you find the partners? What do you do in terms of matchmaking? And this is also where we could bring in the topic of either collaborating within disciplines or across disciplines, which is to me, in my experience, an extra interesting dimension is to introduce interdisciplinary work into the curriculum through COIL. Does anyone want to comment on the matchmaking, the finding partners? I imagine also an alliance context makes it easier because you know the partners better, you know who to ask if there are people interested in specific COIL topics. Do you want to comment, Hannah, or yeah, we can go
Yeah,
to... Yep.
maybe I quickly
Yeah.
start. As I said, we have matchmaking events at the Alliance, where, like for example, there's one in September, and two lecturers have already reached out here at Humboldt University who are interested in developing a COIL, but are still looking for a partner. And then they have the chance then to, or we fund their travel to the matchmaking event, so they might find someone there. In other cases, we have just emailed partners we're working with anyway at the different universities and have asked, hey, can you connect me to this person we have identified at your university? We have someone here interested in working with them, and yeah, through personal, on the personal level within the alliances. That works quite well as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Judith, you wanted to add something on that point?
Yeah, it's actually very similar here also. Some matchmaking events where sometimes we do a week where we like bring together the like one discipline, but then from the 10 partners for one study program. So that works well. And then also we do have a partner search tool, but it mostly depends on ENLIGHT yeah, staff or offices to actually find partners within. But we think this is also something that we can actually do and offer that helps them to set up a virtual exchange within ENLIGHT instead of, I mean, they of course can find it otherwise as well, or can do it with other partners, but that's something we can offer extra because we have ENLIGHT staff.
Okay, thank you. Unless there's something Simone wants to add on this issue of matchmaking, there is actually another area of questions that I think is different, is about how to structure and build the learning experiences within COIL. There was one specific question about how do you organize the get to know part of the experience, and how can you have collaborations within labs, for example? How can that work in COIL? Does anyone want to tackle that, Simone?
Yeah, I mean, you can just be very creative in the icebreakers at the beginning of the course. Um, I mean, I have some links which maybe we can share also when we share the slides, for, you know, some ideas for icebreakers at the beginning of the course to get to know each other. It's really a very important part of the COIL experience is to give students that space to get to know each other and become familiar with each other and to trust each other. So those icebreakers are critical in building up, you know, the basis for the rest of the assignments. I mean, I think someone wrote Padlet. I mean, Padlet's great to use, but you can also just do something basic like get them to, you know, make a PowerPoint slide with images of themselves doing different activities like their hobbies or their favorite food or whatever. Just anything that they can start talking about with one another. Yeah, and, you know, that's kind of it. And you can be extremely creative about it. I know. I think it was one other course where they had like, okay, take a picture of the inside of your fridge. And then they would discuss what's inside the fridge, you know, because it's very different in different countries. So, you know, stuff like that is just simple things that can start the conversation. But I'll send a link to a resource page with the PowerPoint so that people can check that out.
Okay. There's one more question I would really like to raise. Is someone was asking about how do you compare the impact of COIL to physical mobility? I think that's a really interesting question that we've often discussed, and I think part what of what Simone explained touches on that. It's of course it's completely different than physical mobility, but the learning does happen by bringing students outside of their comfort zone and being in this vulnerable position of depending on others to solve a problem, and to have to learn to collaborate. And collaboration is the key word, I think. And
Yeah.
you
Well, I
learn
mean,
it by doing.
even if you go abroad, right, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will further develop your intercultural competence, right? So, there's people who travel a lot and still are not very interculturally competent. So I think the difference with COIL is that it's very intentional. So you really design the assignments so that intercultural learning is at the heart, is at the key of it, and you really focus on that. So I think that's the difference. It's in that sense, if you design it well, it is guaranteed that they will develop intercultural competence.
Does anyone else want to comment on how the alliances see the strategic difference between physical mobility and something like COIL? Judith or Hannah, any comments on
Yeah,
that?
maybe
Is there a hierarchy between the two? Is it considered that one is the second choice and one is the first choice?
I'm not sure about that, but maybe I can just add that we also don't really see it as an alternative, but more as an addition. We see that with physical mobility, we don't reach all of the students. There's always students who don't do physical mobility. We can maybe reach those with virtual internationalization. And also maybe students can start off with a virtual internationalization experience that then motivates them to go on a physical mobility. So we see it more as an addition than definitely not as a replacement.
Okay. Um, Lotte, I'm sure you've also been monitoring the Q&A box. Did you spot anything important that we did not yet touch on?
I think, yeah, that last question was also what I wanted to reflect on a little bit, because we are kind of caught between having to do impactful internationalization and we also have to do something that provides numbers. So again, the question whether COIL is kind of one of the magical tools we have is a question that perhaps for finalizing we could reflect a bit upon. I know you already said something, but again, physical mobility long term is kind of the gold standard. But again, as you said, Simone, it doesn't really guarantee any learning if you don't reflect upon it or if nobody really follows up on it. And
Yeah.
we don't always do that for resource
Yeah.
reasons. So again, yeah, should COIL
Well,
be something we really push for in the alliance settings, because we have maybe an arena where we could pursue this.
What I also would like to add to that is when you think about your strategic mix of activities in the alliance, one of the advantages of COIL, which was mentioned by Simone and maybe by others as well, is administrative simplicity in a sense. There are no complicated issues of tuition fees or even credit transfer or transcripts, or because the students typically in a COIL experience stay under the responsibility of their own teacher who is doing the assessment in
Yeah.
collaboration with the colleague, of course. I think that's also important and not always fully realized. Um, I don't know, Simone, you want to say something about that, or Judith or Hannah?
Um, yeah, maybe, I mean, I don't know within the alliances or whichever alliance you're in, if you're assessing the impact of such of COIL or virtual exchange courses, but maybe that's if you have to show impact, perhaps it's an idea also to include assessment tools as well that can be used to assess the students' development. Of course, it's self-report, because they'll be filling this survey, and so that's something to consider too. But maybe that's something we can also include when we send out the slides as well, so resources people can use to measure the impact.
Yeah. Actually, unless Judith or Hannah wants to add something important at this point, or something that was really missing until now, I would say that in all the discussions we've just had, we've touched upon a lot of things, but there are definitely many areas where we only scratched the surface, such as intentional design of online learning experiences. I think there's a lot more to share on that. So what I would propose is that when we send out a survey after this event, we will send out a small survey, and we will also invite you participants to bring or to highlight topics that you would like us to cover in following webinars, where we could go more in depth maybe on some of these aspects: how to organize matchmaking, how to organize support, how to structure the
Assess.
how to assess, yes.
Yeah.
So much more to discuss, but I'm hopeful that today's discussion have at least brought some inspiration to you, our participants, and maybe raised some new questions to explore in the future. Lotte, may I ask you also to conclude this webinar together with me?
Yeah, a warm thanks to our speakers for enlightening us on various levels on this. I think this was really crucial information. Again, we need to dive more into the practicalities. I can see you have a lot of questions. We've answered some of them, but not all. So we look forward to following up. So thanks to those nearly 200 of you who chose to spend your Friday afternoon with us. I hope you will have a lovely weekend, and we look forward to following up on this with you. So thank you very much, and huge round of applause for our speakers.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.